I'm going to let my big brother start because he remembers more than I do.
Well, I think it's a great idea for us to just sit here and remember. Uh, we had a wonderful upbringing by two parents who cared for us, encouraged us in our various enterprises, and I would say left us with the benefit of their genes and the talents that they fed into us.
They were loving, nurturing people. And you know, people think they grow up in fancy places or this or that. We had a world of the best possible upbringing. Two people who loved each other like nobody I ever saw except Lester and Bernice.
Mm-hmm.
And they loved us. And they let us know it in many, many ways. You know, they didn't have a great childhood at first. They both grew up in Ukraine. Dad's family came from Zhytomyr, which was a little, just a growing small village, and today is a major, major industrial city in Ukraine. He was one of 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. The last one was born here. His father worked for a furrier, and the best memory I can recall is Dad telling us his mother used to bake this white bread, and then we have this in the other recording. Grandma, where's Joe? Where's Joe? Joe was down at the barracks trading his mother's white bread for what we now call Russian health bread. I think we still love to this day. I have that love for dark breads and really rough grain, and it's a wonderful memory. Mom, on the other hand, she used to say she was from Kiev, but of course Jews were not allowed to live in Kiev. They had to live beyond the Jewish Pale. So she lived in a little village called Boshkavorka. By the way, our dad's parents were Reuben and Leah, who later moved to the Bronx. And Mom's parents were Philip, who we got to know quite well because eventually he lived with us, and his wife Molly, who unfortunately died of what they call consumption then at the age of 47. I have a vague memory of going up there once on Coney Island Avenue.
Oh, I have better memories.
Oh, good.
Because when you were born,
I remember.
when you were born, I stayed with them.
Oh, really?
And I remember sleeping with them in their bed, a huge bed with a big feathery quilt. And until Mom came home with you, I stayed with them.
I never knew that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So at any rate, Grandpa...
Cut it short, Herb.
Okay.
Enough. History. Let's talk about you and me.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about him.
Who?
Grandpa.
Oh, Papa.
My mother's father, Grandpa Philip, who had built the log house in which they lived in Ukraine. It was a one-room house, and there was a shelf over the fireplace. So one of the girls, it was she and Sally, one slept in that little eave over the fireplace. The other slept on the one big trunk which Grandpa made. And she tells stories of the Cossacks coming around and setting fire. Her mother's hair was burning, and they realized that they had to come to the U.S. And the one story I remember most is they had rich relatives who owned land and owned business, and there was a lot of talk amongst people like our parents, our grandparents, that the Russian Revolution was coming. This was in the year 1914, when when World War I started, although the Americans didn't enter until 1917, and they had to leave, and the relatives did not want to leave, so...
I'm getting impatient, Herb.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to tell the story that they went to visit them. Grandma ordered a horse and wagon, and they went overnight. And as Grandma said, if you saw her recording, on the way we saw a cherry orchard, and she said at 99 she remembered when she was 7 years old that they passed a cherry orchard, and she said, and Chekhov wrote a play called The Cherry Orchard.
The house that they lived in was next door to a nunnery, and within the grounds of the nunnery were cherry trees. Grandma would get ask the nuns for the cherries. She'd make cherry jam and give the cherry jam to the Mother Superior, making a friendship between them that was very important, because when the Cossacks were due to come, the nuns knew about it before, and they would pre-warn Papa and Grandma and Mom and Aunt Sally. So they'd bring the animals into the house, muzzle them, and make out like there was no one home, because the Cossacks would come and set fire to the house. That was the state of their living at that time.
And typically, as my mom told us, they brought the cow into the house for the winter. The winters were so severe that the cow couldn't last outdoors in the frigid Ukraine.
Really?
Yeah. So we each had stories to tell, and we want to share them.
Not the cow in the winter.
So, you want to talk about when they came to this country?
I'd rather talk about us and the growing up.
Well,
Okay.
finish. I mean, you have Ruth coming to the country, and but what about Joe?
They
What about
came
your
in
dad?
about the same time. Of course, they didn't meet until years later, when Ruth was 18 and Joe was 21. And well, let's jumping ahead. I'll come back to that. But Ruth tells a story that they came in May, and when we went to Ellis Island a few years ago, we found the ship's registry. They came in with their Russian names. She remembered that they left from a German port on a ship called
Bremen.
Yes, and we found the registry where it was Ruchel and Sally's Russian name and their mother's Russian name when they came over. So the story was they came over in May, and they didn't register them for school till the September term. By September, our mother was perfectly fluent in English. She didn't want to wear the dirndl skirt that her mother had got her with a peasant blouse, and they were Americanized. And she told us the story, if you don't mind, that when she was in a sewing class, she was so intent on finishing it, when she lifted her head up, the whole classroom was dark. Everyone had gone home. And she tells that story with pride, because she always was a sewer and a knitter.
And Joe, did he come here under similar circumstances?
We knew very little about when they came, just that they moved to the Bronx, and all of my father's family lived somewhere near the Grand Concourse. I can name the 8, but it's not important. But and when they first got married, I'll jump ahead a little bit, they moved to the Grand Concourse, but Mom did not want to be with their family. She wanted to be with her sister Sally, who lived in Brooklyn. So when I was 1 year old, we moved back to Brooklyn, and I can tell you we lived at 715 Avenue O, 718 Avenue O.
No, first 805.
Oh, 805, excuse me. Go ahead.
My first remembrance of my mother was when I was 3. I had an emergency appendectomy operation. I can remember being carried down the stairs in the middle of the night. Next thing I remember was being in a crib in the hospital, in a ward with a lot of other babies in cribs. It was visiting time, but it wasn't until the precise moment of the visiting hours that Mom was allowed in. But I saw her peeking in from the outside door. She had a gift in her hand. As soon as the nurse opened the door, she came running up to me, hugged me, kissed me, and gave me a coloring book and crayons.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 3.
That's your first memory.
That's my first memory.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you guys want to move toward your growing up and everything
I
now?
want to talk a little bit about that.
Because I want to end this. I want to cut it and then start a new video.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.